In this video, I'm going to present a few Star Marine tips and tactics to improve your chances of winning the team-based game mode. As a disclaimer, I am not the best at Star Marine, however, I score in the top 6 fairly consistently and have learned a few things that may help you do better. Throughout, I will quote Sun Tzu's advice from The Art of War in order to base these tactics in fact rather than mere opinion. Each topic is separated out in this table of contents. General. Let's start with the basics. If you know your enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. The key to all warfare is knowledge. If you merely charge in without thought, you have already lost. If you know your limits and advantages, and that of the enemy, then you can obtain victory everywhere it is possible. When you die, ask yourself why you died, and, if possible, how you could have avoided death. Don't just think immediate causes either. If you were surprised or outnumbered, why? A minute prior, did you advance too quickly, get careless, make a calculated risk, etc.? Battles are often decided before the first bullet is fired. First, maximize your victories before the battles, then you will maximize your victories in battle. The good fighters of old first put themselves beyond the possibility of defeat, and then waited for an opportunity of defeating the enemy. To secure ourselves against defeat lies in our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself. Thus, the good fighter is able to secure himself against defeat, but cannot make certain of defeating the enemy. In other words, prioritize life over combat. If you die, you must wait to respawn and then return to the front lines, while the enemy steals your objectives and murders your allies. If you survive, then you can work to gain an advantage and use that to defeat your foes. Also, even if you play with no mistakes as best as possible, you may still lose, as this is a team game, and some players may be better or worse at shooting. To dive into the specifics, let's start with points. If you kill someone, you get a variable amount of points depending on whether they were near an objective, killed an ally, have A status, killed you, are using an objective, etc. These are typically around 100 points, but they range to 350 or so. If you capture an objective, you will get 250 points. If you assist, that is, are in the same room when the capture completes, then you get 25 points. Thus, I typically have a poor KD ratio and a very high point count, because I focus on objectives which consistently reward more than most kills. Movement speed. The default key for sprinting is left shift. When sprinting, your gun is lowered. You should always sprint when you are certain the enemy is not near you. For example, at the start of a match, you can sprint to the 3 closest objectives. You should always sprint between cover when repositioning. You can do this under fire, but that does carry the risk of getting killed. When engaging the enemy, you don't want to sprint so that your gun is in the firing position. Movement direction. Obviously you want to move towards the enemy objectives, but there is a choice in which one you head to. Appear at points which the enemy must hasten to defend. March swiftly to places where you are not expected. You can be sure of succeeding in your attacks if you only attack places which are undefended. So in war, the way is to avoid what is strong and strike at what is weak. For example, in the very beginning, it is ill-advised to attack the objectives closest to the enemy, but after they have advanced, it is ideal to strike that objective as it is frequently undefended. Force compositions. It is the rule in war: if our forces are 10 to the enemy's 1 to surround him, if 5 to 1 to attack him, if twice as numerous to divide our army into 2. If equally matched, we can offer battle. If slightly inferior in numbers, we can avoid the enemy. If quite unequal in every way, we can flee from him. Keeping the principle of attacking what is weak, never engage a force of more than 5, except maybe to throw a grenade. At the same time, you should retreat when you are among 5 or more allies. In a map with 12 players and 4 objectives, you can evenly divide the players into 3 teams of 4. Thus, if you are in a larger team, you are depriving other teams elsewhere of manpower. You may indeed want even more teams for flanking or capturing all 4 objectives. In addition, follow the universal rule: do not bunch up. If you are in a team of 2 or more, spread out or otherwise reposition yourself away from your allies. If you follow this rule, you will passively surround the enemy without saying a single word. Move to the right or left of an enemy as if to avoid your allies. Obviously, don't run towards the enemy. If encountering a large force, toss a grenade if possible and retreat. Do not attempt to fire on them. Instead, retreat behind a corner and prepare to ambush them when they follow after you one by one. Retreating isn't cowardly, especially since the enemy will forget your retreat and remember how you slaughtered them moments later. If you are encountering a similar-sized force, engage them quickly from a safe angle. That is, if possible, avoid engaging them head-on. If you are in a large force, rush past the enemy, not through, as they may kill you. This way, the enemy will either have to turn away from a large number of enemies in order to target you, retreat, or be surrounded by you. Objectives. Tap F by default, and wait for the meter to complete to capture an objective. However, make sure you are safe when you do so. At the beginning of a match, the objective closest to you is safe to capture. The rest will be under enemy fire when you arrive. Make sure you kill any nearby enemies before you attempt to capture, unless you are with allies who can protect you. It's helpful to check your radar and wait for a couple of seconds, and if no enemies are near, then capture. Know the difference between enemies on your floor and enemies above or below you. Always stay alert to enemies following you or hiding in ambush. It helps no one if you die while trying to capture. If you see an enemy close to you on your floor and you are really close to capturing, don't move. However, if you worry they may kill you before you capture, you can cancel the animation by trying to move. This will take a second to cancel, so do so before you get shot at. Guns. I prefer the ballistic rifle because I'm used to it, and it's versatile. Long range is most useful when in space, and short range when you can reliably close range to use it. Keep in mind you cannot kill anyone by shooting their arms or legs. That does 0 damage. You must shoot their body or head. Guns may sometimes be jammed when you first spawn. That is, they do not fire on command. You can unjam them by sheathing and unsheathing the weapon, or switching the weapon, or tossing a grenade or medkit. This may be fixed in future patches. Finally, when you run up to a corner and your gun points up in your face, then you can lean using Q or E by default. This hides much of your body behind the wall while allowing you to aim and shoot at any enemies on the other side. Grenades. Press G to throw a grenade. Do so whenever you see 2 or more enemies bunched up close together. They are begging you for a grenade, so kindly oblige. When you can predict where enemies will go, grenades are also useful. They're also handy as a last resort panic button. To avoid dying to a grenade, never bunch up and stay alert to your surroundings. Grenades are pretty obvious when thrown, but you can miss or forget them if you aren't paying attention. Additionally, avoid staying in one place too long while engaging the enemy. If you get caught in a choke point, it's safer to risk running past the enemies than to sit there under enemy fire and grenade spam. Medpacks. The default key to use a medpack is V. Do this whenever you have a red cross near your health, which means you will otherwise bleed to death. You should always keep moving while using this, unless in cover. However, if you start sprinting, you may cancel the animation. Medpacks will heal your character to full health, which may be useful if you're running through enemy fire, but the animation does take a second, so keep that in mind. When activating the animation, it always helps to move into cover or at least out of enemy fire, such as to their side. Remember, you start with 2, and must restock if you spend them all, although you do always spawn with a max. When in doubt, use a med pack instead of a grenade or firing, if it has even a small chance of saving your character. This is because, once healed, you can now try again to flank and shoot the enemy, rather than die the first time you get a stray bullet. EVA. When you enter the vacuum of space, you also enter EVA mode, and the sniper's territory, so always be cautious. Players can EVA into space and then head up and above you or off to the side and snipe at any enemies who also EVA into space. You're also fairly slow in space, even with boost, which is the same key as sprint, and thus this is the perfect time for an ambush. Therefore, it helps to check your surroundings before you start EVAing into the open. You are relatively protected before you enter space, not after. Always remember to position yourself for a perfect vertical landing and practice doing this at speed. If you miss the landing, you'll fall on your side for 3 seconds, or it essentially feels like forever as you'll probably get shot at by even the weakest enemy players. You can also grab a sniping weapon yourself and rule the skies. Just be cautious you don't get discovered and killed yourself. If you do so, it helps to travel above the enemy. Humans often forget to check above or below them when in 3D space, so sit in their blind spots. Finally, if you're swift, you can use space to find numerous shortcuts in all of the maps. Station Damien. The north base has one route to, usually safe space near B, and one near C, which can split to A or B. The south base has one route to, usually hostile, space near A, the elevator which leads to A and D, and one entrance towards B. A is entirely open to space, which makes it very easy to protect or camp. You can directly drop into A, but it will damage you even if you land upright. B is protected from space by a pile of crates, which are amazing for flanking enemies. C has stairs, which you have to climb to reach, but you can use the twisting hallways to great advantage. Its proximity to the north and depth into the base makes it a challenge for the south team to capture. D is easily accessible from space, but not open to direct fire from space. This makes it relatively easy to capture. It is very difficult to get to from the north except by space, whereas the south have an indoors route. Overall, space is critically important to every objective except C, due to the large, open, and numerous entrance points to space. Echo 11. The north base has a lower route which splits to C or D. The route to C gives 2 entrances, and the route to D gives high ground. It also has a secondary route to D, which also gives high ground, and a third route which leads to a short EVA towards a longer interior to A. The south base has a route to above A, drop down via ladder, which also leads to C or EVA, and a route to C which provides quicker access to A and a longer route to B. A is South's baby. It is very close to South spawn, has multiple entrances from South spawn, has very little cover from spawn. However, it has one weakness. Directly above it is a quick route to EVA. If the north turns sharply left after EVAing the short gap and flies over the entire base, they have a straight shot to the EVA near A. B is pretty common ground, elevated in favor of south and hidden through many twisting corridors. It has an EVA access, but it is on the lower floor and isn't that short. C has 3 main entrances favoring the north plus an EVA entrance. Because of the imbalance, north frequently bottlenecks the south here and may push all the way to A. The terrain beyond C, however, favors the south. And, with some luck, the south can make use of the north's multiple entrances as cover to encircle the enemy. D is the north's baby. The north has easy access to high ground where the objective lies, and any EVA access requires traversing up stairs which are easily defended. In addition, there is a corridor that can be used to shoot at D and the stairways from cover. Overall, space is useful for shortcuts, but the bulk of the action is centered around traversing past numerous stairways, which allows countless ambushes and blockades to be set up. That's all. If you have any more tips, let me know in the comments below.